Well, Pam, which way you going? Left or right?
Right.
That's too bad.
Why?
Well, because it was a 50-50 shot on whether you'd be going left or right. You see, we're both going left. You could have just as easily been going left, too, and if that was the case, it would have been a while before you started getting scared. But since you're going the other way, I'm afraid you're gonna have to start getting scared immediately.
There's no more room in hell. The dead will walk here.
Out, low down. I just can't take no pleasure in killing nothing. Just some things you gotta do. Death has come to your little town, Sheriff.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Who's laughing now? Be one of us. Join us! Join us! Join us! Well, we'll just wait here for a little while. See what happens.
Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to another edition of SplatterCast. I'm Dylan Newell,
And I'm Luke Janesco.
and yes, today is our, Halloween week episode. We are coming up on that starting on the following Monday, but I just like to say this is the last week of October, so, we're just going to kind of bleed this as our main event Halloween week podcast. So lots and lots of fun here. And we're talking about a pretty recent flick.
Oh man, this is obviously the most recent flick we've done here on SplatterCast. Very new, but I would say that this one has left a pretty big impression on both of us. Definitely me, I can say, since seeing this in June.
Yeah, no, this was one that we were both pretty surprised about. Like, we were interested in seeing it, to say the least. Like, it had been on our radars because it had been pushed back due to like pandemic stuff and everything a couple of times. And so, it was just one of those ones where I was like, okay, yeah, like I'll go see this. And my expectations were pretty mid, I would say. I was like, all right, it is what it is. Scott Derrickson was somebody that at the time I was a fan of Doctor Strange. I hadn't seen Sinister in years by this point, but with this coming out, I did go back and watch Sinister, and if you've been keeping up with us or you don't know, we ended up covering that on the show right around the time that this hit theaters because I was so impressed with just how much I actually fell in love with that movie rewatching it all this time ago. So Scott Derrickson jumped up in my books quite a bit, and this film definitely contributed to that.
And for this one, I think I had seen the trailer, like you were saying, this had gotten pushed back, and I think maybe we mentioned this when we kind of did a little discussion on the Black Phone. This was originally slated either end of January or beginning of February, so I had seen the trailer almost around Halloween time, I think, of last year, when I was seeing Antlers is when it was, and very intrigued by this film. Thought it looked pretty unique. I was sold on that trailer alone, just with the phone ringing and seeing a little bit of Ethan Hawke playing the grabber there. So I was very intrigued. I was very angry when this had gotten pushed back to June. So I had anticipating it, actually forgotten about it for a little bit of time. And then it was kind of like, what was that movie that I saw the trailer for? And I was like, oh yeah, The Black Phone. And then realized it was coming out in June. So then I got extra hyped for it. And then, looking into Sinister, I remember watching Sinister and liking the majority of that film. And, I don't think either of us are fans at the end, but
No.
I hadn't seen it in a long while until you had suggested doing it for SplatterCast. And like after watching it and really dissecting it, I mean, we speak really highly of that film. And even now, thinking about all the great elements in that film, and you could definitely see shades of The Black Phone in there. So Scott Derrickson has a really great eye for filmmaking, and it really shines through with a lot of his horror films.
Yeah, no, I mean, the dude, honestly, like coming into this, I could really appreciate more of his work. And I think that this movie, like Sinister is a nice jumping off point for him. We both said that the ending for us doesn't really work. It kind of peters out there. It just feels like it wraps up too quickly, and not so cohesively. In my opinion, you can go to our podcast and listen to us kind of talk about that. We break down our thoughts and feelings pretty in depth with that. But, for me, this was like really well refined. And, this is one of those things where I think that him going into the Marvel world and making Doctor Strange and dealing with a like a 150 to 180 million dollar project with all these big stars and all these visual effects, I think you can see where he got to kind of cut his teeth a little bit more and understand the animal of big budget filmmaking. So that way he could come back and you could really feel that there's a lot of freshness here. There's a lot of eagerness to just tell a smaller story and to kind of really lean into his horror roots a little more. I think Doctor Strange is great. I love the first Doctor Strange a lot. I would have really liked to see him do Multiverse of Madness. But I mean, we got Sam Raimi for that, so it's not all doom and gloom. But, it is one of those things where it's like, I think that, if they gave me a timeline after knowing what I know now, and they said, you can either go where Scott Derrickson makes Multiverse of Madness or the Black Phone, it's the Black Phone all the way, because this movie, whether, I'm a big Marvel guy, this, but I would watch this movie probably 100 times over before I watch Multiverse of Madness. I think that this movie is just so well done, from the performances, the camera work, just the script writing and everything, just the way they tell their story. It's just so smart, and they just spend so much time on their characters. They make you care about everybody involved, and it's a wonderful film.
Yeah, and that's where it's like, kind of, I would say, absence makes the heart grow fonder, and I think this applies with that certainly. Where, you get that kind of eagerness back, I feel, and I think you really feel it in this film. Where, I think Sinister was a story he was eager to tell. I mean, he talks about it. We've listened to a few podcasts where he goes in depth. With Robert Cargill, and they discuss kind of what they really wanted to do with that film. And then when you go into Doctor Strange, I mean, it is such a big budget thing. It's one of those, maybe you have this idea or that idea, but you have to run it past so many people. By the time that it gets back to you, it gets so sterilized, it may not even probably feel like the original idea that you had. So kind of, because he was going to do Multiverse of Madness and then pulled out right due to creative differences.
Yes, that's what they say. It was creative differences, which I believe, because he wanted Multiverse of Madness to be more leaning into the horror than it ended up being. Like, it's definitely leans in a little deeper than the first film did, but he wanted this to really lean into horror. And I think at the time, they were reshuffling Spider-Man and everything, so the multiverse, it is the Multiverse of Madness, kind of took center stage there. So it's like, we can't promise you all the horror elements that you wanted. And that's the unfortunate part about these Marvel movies, is it's like, there's, as Luke likes to say, his famous term is, there's a lot of masters to please.
Yeah.
There's a lot of chefs in the kitchen on this. So it's like, he doesn't get final say on things as much as he would working with like Jason Blum, who's going to be like, hey, you made Sinister, you produced Sinister 2, whatever the quality of Sinister 2 was, it still made a good chunk of change for us. What do you want to do? Oh, I want to adapt Stephen King's Son's project here. And it's like, okay, yeah, let's fucking do it. You can do whatever the hell you want. I trust you, kind of thing. And it's great.
And that's where, the Marvel studio stuff, you can get an eye for, I mean, Taika Waititi, Ryan Coogler, all these guys, looking at some of the films they've done, they're great. They feel unique to them, but even that is only to a certain extent, where it becomes almost not even a collaboration at one point. And I feel like that's probably what Scott Derrickson was feeling, where it's, you can't make the film that you want. No, to an extent, maybe you can, but we have, you have to include this, you have to include that, you have to include that. So about 95% of this film is going to be what we need you to include. And then, put the 5% Scott Derrickson flair on it, and we'll call this a collaboration. We're kind of pulling away from that. And you realize how in touch he was with Joe Hill adapting this short story, and we'll dive into it. There is Scott Derrickson and Robert Cargill fingerprints all over this. I mean, for me, this feels like such a collaboration amongst all three of them that this can, it's Joe Hill's short story, but this is all their movie, because I think Joe Hill laid that groundwork, that blueprint that they can work off of. And then these two guys really ran with the ball and kind of put their own, I guess, blood and connective tissue into this film to really make this something very unique and different.
Yeah. And I mean, like everything from just the way they changed the character, just from his overall appearance and look and how he acts. There's still elements to that. Like you finished the short story. I only got about halfway through. But it's like, it's nothing against it. I like it a lot. I'm just,
we run out of time,
running out of time with all the other projects we've been doing and all the things that we had to put out. It just really slipped my mind. And I had weeks to listen to it. And honestly, like, it was one of those things where it's just like, it just kept slipping my mind. And then literally like a day or two ago, we talked about it and we were like, shit, we got to get on that. So that way we can have that comparison, because like, even just watching this movie twice over the last few weeks was kind of a chore for me with all the stuff we've had to do. But it's still one of those things where it's like, I still fucking loved watching this movie and watching it in quick succession. Unlike you, I didn't see this movie 4 times in theaters.
Yeah,
so
it was only 3.
Oh, only 3. Okay, gotcha. So, I didn't see it 3 times in theaters, so I didn't have like that exposure. I saw it once with you, raved about it, and then I didn't watch it until this podcast, because it was shortly after that podcast that we decided to make this our Halloween week kind of big flagship. We're watching this and we're going to do this for SplatterCast. So, it's just like, that's just where it was. And, the kind of funny thing about it is we kind of selected this because at the time, this was probably both our favorite horror film of the year.
Yeah.
And, little did we know, I mean, we had these prospects coming up with like, Barbarian and stuff, and Terrifier and all these things. We knew about them, but like, Lord, did we underestimate how packed this year was going to be.
Yeah.
And this one just gets to really say, I mean, there were a few others, but this gets to honestly, for me, say that this kind of opened the floodgates, as you would say, through this summer and then through the end of the year, of just all this great horror that we've gotten. And I know we've been saying it like crazy, but it's like, it's truly is a miraculous year in horror. And this is firmly up towards the top for both of us.
And this one was really leading that charge, like you're saying, where we had a couple tentpole mainstay horror releases this year with Scream in January, and then we just had Halloween Ends. And I think it's safe to say we were both not as happy with either of those releases. So this really became a year of unique horror releases. And again, we talk about it all the time. I mean, the Curse came out this year too as well.
Yes, yeah, that one we got to see. That came out in January, but that was such a small release and a quick turnaround that I think by like, God, it was early February that hits streaming.
Yeah.
So we ended up watching it, and then like we covered it for the first episode, just a review of it. So like that's gonna have to get its full episode at some point, because like,
Absolutely.
but that really kicked it all off for us. Like,
and that's where it's like, what a year we've had in this kind of unique horror space, where The Curse seems so long ago. I couldn't even remember if it was actually this year or not. But I would say this one really cemented and kind of led that charge, because we had The Cursed, and then it kind of was dormant for a little bit. As it happens, where we kind of get all these horror releases around this time, and then we don't really get that much sprinkled throughout the year. And this was just one of those unique cases where The Black Phone came out in June. So this one really did lead that charge in terms of that unique horror space that we always talk about here, where there's so many different stories to tell. And man, it didn't disappoint. This one really did kick it off, and then we got Prey, and then we got Barbarian. I mean, singing a lot of praises this year in horror, just not necessarily the mainstay stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, that's not a bad thing necessarily. Those films have had their time. They have big, massive franchises. I mean, this was the 13th installment in the Halloween franchise, and then the fifth installment into Scream. It's nice to have films that are just one movie, like one and dones, like, we've had. And I know that they've kind of hinted and talked about doing some kind of a sequel or something to this film has been brought up. Lord knows if that's ever going to actually happen. I don't think it necessarily needs to happen. But, it is one of those things where it would be nice to see, maybe Ethan Hawke's character get expanded in some form of way. But again, we'll get into it here. I don't necessarily know if that's needed because it's like he is well-rounded in this. I like a lot of what they do with him. But yeah, either way, this is very firmly one of the best of the year. And like if I was to make like a poster or like a thumbnail for the end of the year kind of thing, I mean, I would have The Grabber as one of the center focuses as far as like, this is really cool shit. Like this was nice to see kind of stuff. So that's it's left its mark, we should say, like firmly into 2022.
And like you had said, I'd seen this one 3 times in the theater. And then as this became available on Peacock, oh, what a lovely day that was, finding out that it dropped and it was easily accessible because I had turned it on that night. I've watched it a handful of times already, even prior to this podcast. And now that we've done the podcast, I've watched a couple more times. I will say that exhaustion is setting in, but it's still a great film. I have even more respect because I watch it and, you kind of just consume it. But then when we do these podcasts, you're kind of forced to do a little more research and listen to the commentaries and things like that. And, because you always say, I'll get around to it. But now you're actually forced to do it. So it's like looking at the storytelling behind the scenes, what Scott Derrickson's mindset was for this, you get a whole new level of respect for this film. So it's like this one, honestly, is going to be one of the highest marks in 2022. It's probably going to live on for the next few years for me in terms of impressions, to say that this is a measuring stick of sorts, where it's like, oh, well, you remember what came out last June, so it's going to be one of those for me. It's going to be a talking point. So be ready for that, Dylan.
Hey, I'm here for it, just like we did with Prey. Prey was kind of like we compared that as far as the entire year went along of like, oh, this is what they're doing with that to revamp the franchise. Then that came out and turned out so well. And now anytime we discuss streaming, we're like, oh, well, you could do like Prey, or you could do like this. And then, I think Hellraiser can get thrown in there too, because that was pretty good itself. So, it's one of those things.
That's
where
another
it's
one
like,
I have to rewatch.
I know. We have to dive into that a little deeper. We kind of owe it to them. We didn't, that was such a stacked weekend with everything that we still owe everybody kind of a spoiler deep dive on that. So maybe this upcoming week we can get it done, kind of leading into Halloween.
I'm eager to dive back into that one for sure.
Me too. It's one that I have been meaning to watch. I want to get my wife to watch it with me because I think that this would be the best. Cause I love my wife to death. I do. She's a little harder to please when it comes to the older movies and stuff. So it's kind of like, unless it's something they're super familiar with, they're not going to be like, oh, yeah, I'm super into this, or like, I'm super accepting of it. They'll kind of see it as cheesy a little bit, but this would be like a nice updated, spooky kind of like, let's reintroduce you to this. And then maybe we'll go check it out. Cause same thing happened with Prey, where they were not fans of Predator. They had never even seen Predator. Watched Prey, absolutely loved it, and we have plans to watch some of those older Predator movies here soon. So, that's just kind of where I'm at. So it's like, and that's kind of the thing with these newer releases too, that we gotta understand. We might be diehard fans, or we might be familiar with the content being in this horror space, but there's a lot of people who aren't. So it's like this kind of opens the door for them. So.
I'm just intrigued to watch Hellraiser not at like 12:30 at night. So
yeah, right. And not just being like, damn, we got to get this review out. Like, just trying to get as many notes as you can. Cause it's like, there's a lot going on in that movie, and it is a lot deeper than I anticipated. So it's like, oh fuck. Like it's good though. It's definitely one of the ones I gave high marks. So
yeah, it's well constructed for sure.
Alrighty. But why don't we hop into our first segment here that we like to call The Account of the Macabre.
The film which you are about to see is an account of the tragedy which befell a group of 5 youths, in particular, Sally Hardesty and her invalid brother, Franklin. It is all the more tragic in that they were young, But had they lived very, very long lives, they could not have expected, nor would they have wished to see as much of the mad and macabre as they were to see that day. For them, an idyllic summer afternoon drive became a nightmare. The events of that day were to lead to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Alrighty, so this is our segment where we like to break down the synopsis of the story, just kind of let you guys know from A to B to C what's going on in this story. And as always, when we do these little conjoined podcasts, because this is kind of like last week, we kind of both selected this one, so this wasn't necessarily a, I'm my pick or Luke's pick. But Luke, he is the stronger one when it comes to the writing, as you all know. So I'm going to let Luke take this away as he wrote up the synopsis for us.
Oh man, I actually forgot to write it. I just ripped it off of IMDb this time.
Oh boy.
It's a way to build me up, brother. No. All right, let's get into it. Beers cracking and crowds cheering as we start off with some of America's favorite pastimes, some baseball and some kidnapping. Young Finney Blake tries to pull a fast one by Bruce Yamada, but his plans get foiled when his arm just isn't mint enough as Bruce hits a home run. Bruce takes a victory lap home on his bicycle, but a black van rolls up to tell Bruce he's his number one fan. On his way to school with Sister Gwen, Finn watches badass Robin Ariani put on a show and kick the shit out of school bully Moose. Finney encounters a few bullies of his own in the bathroom, but Robin interrupts when he realizes the urinal cakes aren't the only thing smelling suspect in the boys' bathroom. Giving Finn a pep talk that he has to stop running and fight gives us a little foreshadowing on future events. Robin eventually succumbs to the man in the satin cape as he goes missing, leaving Finn to fend for himself with a little help from Gwen. The grabber pulls his biggest magic trick to date as he makes Finney Blake disappear amongst a few black balloons. Finding himself in the basement on a mattress, Finn gets even more creeped out when the grabber puts on a mask and starts delivering lines like he's in a school play. When Gwen gets word her brother has been picked up by Colorado's favorite magician, she taps into her more spiritual side to put an end to the grabber's magic show. Finn can't have his sister have all the supernatural fun as he starts hearing the disconnected black phone ring. Answering the phone and realizing it's Bruce, instead of challenging him to a rematch, he listens to Bruce tell him some of the floorboards are loose enough to dig his way out. Not having enough talent like Shia LaBeouf in the Disney classic Holes, Finney gives up on his plan as he gets another call on the phone. This time, the paperboy has a headline for Finn saying, "Use the damn wire I stored in the wall to escape." After the plan doesn't work out, Finn finds his new pal Griffin hanging around down in the basement late at night. Giving him the combination to escape the front door, Finney makes a quick getaway. The grabber's black van is just too fast for the baseball star as the maniac magician catches Finn and puts his lights out. Waking up and not being able to follow Pinball Vance Hopper's legacy, Finn thinks all hope is lost until old confidant Robin shows back up to give Finn his mojo back. Finn realizes he can't run. He has to stay and fight. And all those sneaky ghosts have been prepping him for this very moment. Getting his plan set up, Finn gets the grabber angry. But Finn pulls a disappearing act of his own as the grabber falls in the hole Finn dug earlier. Finn gives the grabber a beating of a lifetime as he finally wraps the phone cord around the grabber's neck. Finn receives one last call, but it's for the grabber, as he hears that all his naughty boys are waiting for him on the other side to say, "Night, night." And there we have it in a nutshell, the Black Phone.
Excellent. Good synopsis there. Really puts everything into perspective for us. And yeah, I mean, this movie is just dripping with atmosphere, dripping with that nice late 70s vibe that it gives you to. And I mean, if we're just going to kind of get into some of the stuff we liked about the story and some of the things, like, I got to say, rewatching this again, I forgot how this opened. And it opens with him playing baseball. But before all that, you get that nice little crack of the Budweiser can, like the classic style Budweiser can.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just like a perfect and very subtle way to kind of pull you into the time period that we're in. And, you know, for it being a modern low budget film, they really do a great job of emulating that 70s style. and making you really feel like that's where you're at and like grounding you in that situation. Like nothing feels like it's being like it's modern day with a little bit of old paint over it. It feels very lived in.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. I listened to the commentary for this, and Scott Derrickson had come out and said that he didn't want to fetishize the time period of the late 70s like that. He specifically mentioned Stranger Things and saying, it's a great show, but sometimes, we talk about it on here where it kind of gets hyper 80s, with the bright colors and things like this. As this opens and everyone's in the crowd cheering and Finn is at the pitcher's mound, and we have Bruce, ready to swing. This feels real. Neither of us have lived through the late 70s, but it feels like we could easily be sitting in those stands and taking it all in terms of the atmosphere here. So it feels natural. It doesn't feel like hyper late 70s. This is something where if you wanted something to feel so naturalistic, I think this is the route that you go, because it isn't very bright colors, and we're going to really emphasize the late 70s here. This just feels, I don't know how to put it. This feels very in middle America. You know what I mean? Like blue
No, it
collar.
definitely does strike you as having that kind of vibe of just like, it feels real. It feels like it's not trying to be exaggerated, like he was saying, where you kind of get that hyper 80s with Stranger Things. You don't get like a hyperized version of the 70s. It's just very subtle, and it's just very well placed, and everything makes sense. And like you said, it feels that like classic American kind of pastime of them just playing baseball. And like it just sets the stage very well, from the way everybody's dressed to how they're acting to just how everybody like is like living their lives, like kids walking down the street, everything like that. This is all very classic stuff that we've grown to learn from the media that we watch and read, and just the stories of the people that we live with who told us, who lived through that time period.
And some of the choices they make just in this opening scene for me really set set the tone for the characters here, where like Finn, who's going to be our main guy throughout this, he gets two strikes, and then that third one, Bruce hits that home run, and that's kind of like almost setting how life goes for Finn. So close but not quite there. And Don is in the stands watching. You can tell that there's some sort of love interest there for him, and then she kind of walks off at the end. But he's defeated because essentially he lost the game for his team. And as he's coming around, Bruce comes up to him and, shakes his hand and gives him a compliment. Your arm is mint.
And I didn't expect that. I really didn't see that coming the first time I saw that.
And me neither. You would expect some sort of smart ass remark from the guy who just hit the home run. But in that instance, you like Bruce. And so it's like they're really opening this up, creating characters. Bruce is only on camera for a very short time before he's grabbed. And it's kind of, you already like him. You don't want to see that happen. I mean, obviously you don't want to see any of this happen because it's adults and, taking kids, but it's like you enjoy the time you have with Bruce, even if it's very small. And then kind of going back to Finn, you see this resilience in him where he gets the compliment, he sort of smiles. And then as Bruce is, riding his bike, we cut to Finn letting off a rocket in the baseball field, so it's like he's not defeated. He doesn't sit there and linger on the lost game. He's back doing his own interests and in his own thing. And I think you really get that kind of character development where it's like, again, looking at it, he's letting off a rocket. I think that says one thing about him. He's all alone. I think that says another thing about him, so it's like you're really defining these characters in these very opening moments here as we're cutting between Bruce riding his bike home, and eventually to be grabbed here. But I think this is such a smart opening. It gets you really set, and then kind of going into, we talked about this when we talked about when we did our little video on the Black Phone, going into those opening credits. Really,
I was about to say that's where I wanted to go next, because that sets the tone. We start off at such a light high point, really giving you that nostalgic feeling, making you feel all good inside, and then that slow motion of the van coming around the corner. You see it kind of rip the corner into the grass, and something's not right.
Yeah.
But they slow everything down, and then we just glide right into those opening credits where they really start setting the stage of, Yeah, no, the 70s had its nice, classical kind of feeling of just like, this is old town America, but then, there's also old town crime and old town murder. And,
Yes.
it was a lot easier to get away with things back then.
And it's such a juxtaposition right there where again it's apple pie, it's hot dogs in that opening sequence with the baseball and the everyone kind of just having fun, and Bruce even riding his bike through what looks like a great neighborhood. Girls are crossing the street, talking about him, and it just seems like it seems like Haddonfield. You know what I mean? Where
It does.
it's just that safe neighborhood, and then you have this black van rolling up, and you just have a figure. I don't even, does he even get out at that point, or does it just roll up?
No, he just rolls up. We don't even see him get out of the vehicle yet.
And then we cut to these dirty credits, and it's just like we talked about, this very David Fincher kind of feel. It cuts to different, blood, things like that. It's just it's already unsettling to you, and you haven't really gotten deep into this film yet. And I think that's really what Scott Derrickson was trying to achieve here, is to kind of keep the audience on their toes, and kind of you're unsettled already. You don't know what's going to happen. And I know we're going to jump all over the place here. One of the things I want to bring up, because I think it's such a smart thing to do in terms of the storytelling, and I know we'll dive into the short story as well, so we don't really get any of this because this doesn't exist in a short story. But when we look at Bruce Yamada and Robin Ariano, where they're going to be taken, but we only see the grabber from very far away, or we see his van from very far away, and we cut before the actual act of snatching up the child, so we don't get any of that. So by the time that Finn is picked up, it's very visceral, it's very unsettling. My heart was racing in the theater. It's disgusting in a sense of how he does it. So it's like I love that, especially in this opening right before the credits, we just see the black van.
Yeah, no, it definitely it builds that suspense and that tension of what we obviously know from the marketing what is coming, but and we know Ethan Hawke's character from what we've seen is pretty creepy, but this does a really great job of presenting almost that Jaws effect to it, where it's like the black fin or the black the black van is like the fin of the shark in essence. Like you see that come up, or you see the barrels and you think like, oh shit, this is not good. And I think it's a really smart choice to have whenever they're about to get picked up. Footage, everything starts to slow down and you get into that slow motion effect. It's like almost like time just kind of comes to a halt, like everything's kind of moving, but like
Yep.
you can see that when they're in danger, it's almost like the whole world stops. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like it gives you that sense of like how small they actually are when they're just kids. You know what I mean? Compared to the real world. So it's like it's really smart stuff, and it's like whether you guys think I'm reading into that too much or not, I just try to look at it as cinematic language, and that's the kind of impression that I get, is that it's like we are literally watching these kids as they process, oh God, I'm about to get taken, kind of thing. And it's like, because at this point, there's how many kids have been taken? I know they say there's like 7 bodies by the end of it.
Yeah,
Um,
we have the paper boy.
Pinball
We have
Vance.
we have Griffin, and then Robin, and then Bruce. So there's 5 total. I don't think we go into, at least those are the 5 ghosts that help him. I don't know if we have anyone else prior to that. I don't think we do. I think they really just discussed them. So Finn would have been the 6th.
Yeah, so it's like that's kind of where they leave it. And it's like it could have been 5 bodies. I don't remember exactly. I should have probably written that down. But yeah, then we can kind of transition into, we'll kind of keep this pretty broad so that way we can kind of get to the meat on the bone here. But then we start to get out of that. We start to meet his sister, who, wonderful character. Seriously, one of the best written little sisters in cinema of the last few years. Like, I mean, she has so many layers, and I do want to highlight both the actor and actress who portray them. So we have Mason Thames as Finney. That's our main character. He's great. He does an awesome job. He really presents that kind of, like we said, old time, like American, 70s kid who's just out there playing and doing what he can. And then Madeline McGraw as Gwen. and like just fantastic. Not only does she have some of the funniest lines in the movie, by calling police fart knockers and fuck you Jesus, or Jesus what the fuck, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like she is also just really holds her own, and she's got a really really intense scene that we're going to bring up here shortly. That's just really tough to watch, especially like if you're a parent, or if you just even just have an experience with what this subject matter they're going to go into is. It's so brutal, and she sells it really well.
Yes, and that's where it's like I love this dynamic between Finn and Gwen. If there is this kind of duo, Finn's more the straight man and Gwen's kind of the ham. Always kind of coming up with the one-liners and everything like that. Where Finn's the more reserved of the two, and I think that kind of fits for our main protagonist here. But like going into her introduction, even them just walking to school together and things, you really get this relationship of the two, of how they're always looking out for each other. And I know we're going to dive into that one pretty hectic scene with the dad here in a minute, but um, this whole film really emphasizes the relationship these two have.
Yeah, and then that's the backbone of this movie.
Yes. And I think for me, it's a little refreshing because, I don't want to keep comparing this to like Stranger Things or anything like that, but, it can be found in almost anything. I mean, Goonies, if you want to, where there's always the two siblings are at odds. And then eventually there's an issue that brings them together. Whereas these two, they're already together. They've already lived through a very hectic event, and then they're there with a parent that you have to team up with someone in order to kind of get through the day. So these two have already found this kinship, so we come into that. There is no fighting in between the two in this whole film. They're very much a unit, even though they spend the majority of the film apart, but you still feel that connection. I think that was probably that's attributing to the writing, but it's such a hard task to actually achieve, where if you're having two characters spending the majority of the film apart, how do you make them feel together and connected? And I think Scott Derrickson and Robert Cargill really achieve that here, where it's like looking back on it and watching this so many times, it's like, oh yeah, they're really not together at all in this film, other than maybe the first, was it 26 minutes or something like that. But they feel together, so it's like your brain can kind of misremember that to be like, oh, they were together for the majority of the film, because I think it's the way that it's edited, how she spends most of all of her time looking for Finn after he's been taken. They really just develop this bond. It gets even stronger when they're apart, I feel.
Oh yeah, and one of the fun facts I wanted to pull here was that Madeline McGraw, obviously who plays Gwen, we discussed it, was originally unable to appear in the film, as the original shooting schedule clashed with her show Secrets of the Slurpy Springs, or I think that's Slurper Springs, whatever. Scott Derrickson was so impressed with her, however, that he literally pushed back the production date to accommodate her casting. So that's how confident he was in her performance. Like, and I think that was one of the smartest plays you could have when it comes to casting, because like you genuinely, when you find somebody that talented and that young, that's really just taking this character and bringing them to life like she does, I would do it too. Like, I mean, whether, it got some producers mad at you or not, like you want that kind of talent in this movie. And when the film came out, she was one of the biggest highlights. She's one of the things everybody talked about. So it's like, again, a good call on the production side of things. Like you found an actor or an actress who worked and fit that role perfectly, and you accommodated it. You did everything you could to make sure it bettered the film, and it did.
And that's one of the things where I think he talks about that in the commentary as well, where she was unable to attend. I think that's a Disney show, but she was unable to attend for that beginning of production there, and he had went to Jason Blum and said, we need her, and it's like we can't do this film without her. And he said, are you sure? And he said, absolutely. So when we talk about this kind of collaboration here, where you trust your directors and the people that are piecing this film together through their vision. And if they say they can't do something without a particular actor, and to kind of halt production on things and just wait it out for a while. But I think that kind of really helped them in the sense of, I think they were able to do a lot of pre-production stuff, go that extra mile into making this to an even better film. So I think that was such a unique circumstance, and I'm glad that kind of, there was that trust there to say, we need this, because we talk about it, and sometimes we're a little nicer in terms of when we're looking at something and say, well, it's a kid actor, it's their first role, all this stuff, where it's like we're not expecting them to be on par with a lot of seasoned adult actors. So it's like sometimes it's rough to find a very good child actor. So it's like when you find someone the caliber of Madeline McGraw, I mean, you wait, and it's like I think Scott Derrickson could see that bond between Finney and Gwen, between these two actors already, and to knowing how to piece that together, and how this is such a big part of selling that the circumstance of where they're going to be in, and kind of that bond, that he knew he needed this, and in order for this film to succeed to the extent that it did.
Yeah, and it just shows that he had the utmost confidence, and just the energy was there. And that's what I talk about when I say, like, he comes off of these big tentpole projects like Doctor Strange, and he's excited, and he has that kind of drive to say, no, I'm going to do this, I'm not going to make a compromise. I've had people telling me to make compromises and changes for my last like 3 years of filmmaking. I want to just do this, and it's like, of course, anybody would want to make a Marvel movie. If they knocked on our door today, even though Luke's not in it, and they said, hey guys, you can pick from any of these couple of heroes and you're going to make a movie, of course we'd say yes. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, we would give it our best shot. But it's one of those things where it's like, at the end of the day, there is something freeing about working on, your own stuff, or not even your own stuff, but adapting something smaller,
Yeah.
and working with, instead of a $180 million budget, to working with something that's maybe like, 10, 15, or 20.
Yeah.
And I don't even think this movie costs that much. Like, I'll have to pull that up real quick.
And I think that, not to shit on Marvel or anything, I think it's a fun box to check in your resume to say, oh, I did this. But I think it's one of those. We've talked about David Gordon Green, and maybe he was a little tired, it seemed like, after doing 3 films. I feel like a lot of directors can kind of get that wear and tear, to be like, oh, this again. I'm dealing with the same things over and over. Where again, you get hungry and you want to go out, and I don't want to do a budget of 150 million. I want to give me a 5 million budget and we're good to go. I want to get back to those roots and do my own story, and make my own decisions, instead of having to run it by 5 other people to it, before again it gets sterilized and sent back to me, and it's not even my idea anymore.
I know. And like, you and I have worked on short films and stuff like that. And could you imagine having to, just us ourselves playing the role of writers, directors, producers, effects artists, all this stuff, and then having to accommodate somebody else at any point? Like, God, you'd rip your hair out. Like, I mean,
Yep.
We're already ripping our hair out, making just these little shots on our own. But it's just one of those things where it's like, you could imagine the freedom that you get coming back to something like this.
Yeah.
And this film is an estimated, there's no official numbers as of right now, an estimated $18 million budget. And so this movie on its opening weekend made 23.6 2200 or 22,000 or 22 million, my bad, dollars at the box office. So, I'll get it right at some point. Ended up going on to earn 89 million at the United States box office and 157 worldwide.
Not a bad day at the office.
No, it's not. This movie freaking killed it. And, that's just one of the reasons why I think that it was also hailed and loved so much from the production team. But I mean, again, whether we like their Halloween films or not, you can't sit here and discount Blumhouse for what they do. I mean, they give you a smaller budget, and for them, this is a bit of a bigger budget. Like, sometimes they give people like, under 10 million to make movies. But like, that's kind of the smart, that's their bread and butter. They're like, here's some money, go make this movie. You have absolute freedom. Go do what you got to do. I'm only going to put a little bit of input here and there. And then, just bring me back something quality. And then 9 times out of 10 it works. Now, not every movie works. Like, there you're going to get your truth or dares in there and your gallows and stuff like that, where it's like that doesn't really work for me. Might work for some people, but then every once in a while you're going to get a Black Phone or a Sinister or something like that that's going to stand the test of time and just really say, hey, this movie is of a higher quality.
Yeah.
And you love that. You love to see it. But I guess we can kind of get into a little bit more of the dynamics in the family here.
Yeah.
And then we'll move on to the actual grabbing of Finney himself. So
Sounds fun.
when we when we kind of get to this intense scene, like we kind of set up a little bit shortly after, the sisters introduced. Well, first we get introduced to Robin as they're on their way to school. And he's fighting. What was that? It was Moose.
Yeah,
was
Moose.
the bully.
Yeah.
So Robin is Finney's best friend. I guess it's easy to say. Like
Yeah,
I don't
I would guess
necessarily
so.
know that it kind of gives that impression, but it's not like ever formally stated that he's his best friend. But they have a good relationship, and so they're coming up to school, Gwen and Finney, and they see Robin and Moose talking shit to each other, and there's a circle forming. They're about to get into a fight, and Robin just lays this kid out. Like he
Yes.
busts him up, and all ends well. Finney's like, yeah, that kind of sucks. He didn't have to go that hard. Gwen's kind of giving him some shit, like, oh, but Moose is a dickhead. Like, why are you like not celebrating this? But you could tell that Finney's a little put off by all this. This is the violence and everything really isn't his thing.
Yeah.
And so, while this is going on too, I got to mention, it's kind of important that they bring up Pinball Vance a little bit, how Robin's now the toughest kid in school after Pinball Vance Hopper got grabbed. And you can see Finney is kind of like really uncomfortable by that. He doesn't want to, give the grabber his name. She calls him the grabber, and, Finney's like, hey, I really wish you wouldn't call him that, and stuff like that. And, it's just kind of like he doesn't want to give that bad energy or that aura, any power.
Yeah.
And, I thought that was a really unique take to it, because, you do talk to some people who are like, it's kind of like that legend of the boogeyman almost, if you don't talk about him, you don't want to give him that name, you don't want to give him that power, and that if you don't do it, he holds no power over you kind of thing. And I like that. It really builds that tension, even in just their little conversations of who Ethan Hawke's character is.
And I like that decision too. As soon as they walk off screen, he shows up and he's just driving in the back, and all you do is see his silhouette in the driver's seat, and he's got the hat on, and you just see him drive right by, not even really staring at Finn and Gwen. He's just driving past, and I like that decision, kind of building that tension to be like, oh, he's coming, because I mean, we already know what's going to happen in this. We've seen the trailer, we know the story, so we're just kind of waiting at this point. And I love that they build the tension that way, and they don't overdo it either with him. It'd be very easy to pull a Halloween 78 with him driving by. Finn is walking to school and him just kind of like looking, but they don't do that. It's like, I think that's the closest interaction we get between the two before he actually grabs Finn. So, he's kind of been around watching, but we haven't seen it. And I like that decision to kind of not have the audience in the know either. So it's like, once we see that black van pull up, that's when we know shit's about to get real.
Yes. And then this takes us into the school where we see Finn's crush a little bit. What was her name? I didn't catch it. Donna. Yeah. So she kind of, messes with him a little bit. You can tell that she's interested in him, but Finney has like no idea what to do. He just clams up with her. And then he ends up going to the bathroom. And then that's when we encounter the 3 bullies who kind of come in and start harassing Finney a little bit. But before they could do anything too serious, our boy comes in with his bloody knuckles and starts washing him up. And this is when you kind of really start to establish the friendship between him and Finney.
Yeah, and that's where, I talked about Bruce in the beginning here. I really love the establishing of all these characters, because I know we crossed a little bit a couple of different characters here, but looking at like Donna, that I felt like was such an interesting character, kind of dynamic, because looking at that, you would think that maybe the director and writer would kind of play that dynamic of, oh, she's the popular girl, so it's going to be hard. She's not going to pay any attention to Finn, and she's more so the object of his affection. But you instantly love her because they're trying to choose partners. Finn doesn't have a partner, and she just comes right up, kind of throws him that lifeline. And again, she's only on screen for a certain period of time, but I think the writing here is so strong with all these characters, and it's so well thought out that you end up liking a lot of these characters. And going into Robin, this kind of goes in with like with Bruce, because again, he's only on screen for a certain period of time. And when you go in and you see Robin here, and you understand that dynamic, because Finn's being bullied, and you don't really know where it's going to go until Robin comes in, and he calls them all dipshits, and we just got done seeing him kick the shit out of Moose. So obviously no one's going to test Robin out being the badass in school. And, he makes him part ways, and he asks Finn instantly how he's doing. So we know that dynamic. And I mean, he's kind of sending a message to them. And, if that's not enough, he says, you fuck with Finn, I fuck with you, and you just love Robin for that, even though you don't really know him that much. This is really just that follow-up to watching him pummel Moose. That's the introduction to him. And then one of the things that I always think about, and it's such a small detail, but again, I think this goes back to how strong the writing is that conversation he has with Finn, and where they're talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then they end up talking about Bruce Lee. Is it as good as a Bruce Lee? Is it as good as Enter the Dragon? And Robin goes, oh well, maybe it's the second best movie. And then they kind of laugh, and Finn goes, one day I'm going to see a Bruce Lee movie, when it comes on TV. And Robin says, yeah, you will. And, I think it's such a small little thing, but like you would be expecting, maybe a character would be like, make a smart ass comment of, oh yeah, because you can't afford to go to the movie theater or the drive-in to actually see this film. But he just says, yeah, you will. It's that reassuring that he's there for Finn. He's not going to make fun of him. They're friends. It's very earnest, and it's just a small bit of dialogue, but I think it means so much to the dynamic of their friendship.
No, I agree, and it's a nice subtle way to kind of express that it's like he understands that Finney might not have the kind of best situation at home, kind of what you're alluding to there, but at the end of the day, he is he's understanding to it, and he's not trying to be a dick. He's not trying to throw it in his face. He's just treating him like a human being, which is great, because like you get a lot of that in this film, and I feel like it's so much easier to have your main character be this downtrodden kind of, they're always fucking with him kind of kid, but no, they really treat him like a human being, and I always appreciate that whenever we talk about horror movies or just movies in general, because it's like that trope is pretty played out. I understand it's easy to write, but it's just one of those things where it's like, not everybody has to be a monster to this kid, like, because that's just not how reality is. Not everybody treats you like shit, you know what I mean? Like, there are people who treat you poorly, but there are also people who will be kind,
Yeah, and Finn isn't played for that, like such a sympathetic, I don't want to say loser, but I can't think of any better terminology. Like Arnie from Christine, where it's like, oh, you just feel sorry for him because he kind of is this kind of meek character that a lot of people make fun of. Finn is different. It's like they give him, yes, he is not the most popular kid in school, but he's not like this nerd that everyone makes fun of. He is a very good athlete. He just comes from a different kind of home life, and I think this kind of shows it, where Scott Derrickson said they want to fetishize the time period or anything like that, but it seems like they kind of really thought out these characters. It's almost like a hierarchy. Everyone has their own bullies. Just because you're being bullied doesn't mean like you're a huge nerd or anything like that. It just is part of growing up, especially in that instance of you're always going to have someone trying to keep you down in a sense. So I think they do a great job at portraying that and kind of just showing what all these characters are going through, because since we see Finn and in Gwen's home life and we know what that's like, but then they also only briefly touch on Robin's home life, and it's kind of like we know that none of these characters, none of these kids are coming from a strong family unit. It would be one thing if all these families were the Brady Bunch, and it's not that way. It's single parent homes. Everyone's going through their own different things, and it's affecting these kids in different ways. So it's like I really think they kind of showcase the differences in growing up and what kind of support system you have. So in that sense, it feels real. Again, I think Scott Derrickson and Robert Cargill really did a great job of making these characters feel so authentic to the audience.
I agree. And, this really all kind of comes to the head with this single family life stuff. Like right after this sequence, they end up, Gwen and Finney walk home. Gwen goes to her friend's house, and we already established, I think, earlier on, or is this the first time we established that she goes to her friends on Friday nights?
I think
Uh,
this is the
the first time.
time, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, she ends up going there. And Finney goes home. He's like, "Yeah, I'll take care of Dad." Because at this point we've established that their dad's a pretty heavy drinker.
Yeah.
He's clearly coping with the loss of his wife, which I don't necessarily know how long that was. I don't recall them even pointing out how many years it's been.
No, I don't
Uh,
think they have a timeline.
I think it seems like it's been a couple years at least, though.
And that's
Um,
where I like this again, where it's like nothing's all spelled out for us. You can tell that it's probably been maybe a couple years, but it's still an adjustment to everybody and still affects them heavily.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who lost a parent, yeah, it takes a few years before things kind of start to become the new normal. So,
If it ever
it's like,
becomes
yeah,
the new normal,
I mean, yeah, it takes time, but I mean, for the most part, life does move on, and I mean, like that will always be there with you. But I mean, you do establish, at least if you have a strong, support system like I did with my father and my sister, that we kind of pull it together. So it's like you kind of see that the only difference here is that their dad's not so great. I mean,
Yeah.
he is drinking a lot and he's really taking it out on them. He wakes up hungover. They open the bread box too much or chew their cereal too loud, and he's getting frustrated. And they establish
What
that
a
pretty early.
interesting scene that is to kind of establish,
Yeah.
because that's where we really fall into it, and it's just like, oh my gosh, what? Not much is said in that scene, but what a strong scene.
Yeah. And then to cut to here, we see Finney, his dad passes out. He cleans up the beer bottles and stuff like that for him. And then he just spends the rest of his night eating ice cream and watching horror movies. So, he's basically the archetype of what we were when we were kids. You know what I mean? Like, he's just staying up late watching whatever's on TV and passing out in front of the television. Unfortunately, he wakes up to the sound of Gwen screaming. It's early in the morning, and her dad is beating the shit out of her with a belt. And this is a really tough scene. This is probably if the hardest scene to watch in the movie, I'd say. Would you agree
Yes.
with that, you think?
Oh,
Like, I think the rest, there's a lot of implied stuff after this, once we get to, like, Ethan Hawke's character, but, like, this is definitely the hardest,
yeah,
I'd say.
this is the most like blatantly visceral scene that we have, I think, and this really does show why like Finn and Gwen seem, I guess, in a sense, almost more mature than a lot of children characters, where it's like they're so perceptive, um, almost adult like in the way they handle a lot of things, because this really shows they're forced to be adults and handle this kind of wild home life of Finn has to clean up after dad after he's had too many drinks, and he's the one that has to be responsible there, and then this kind of violence that they encounter regularly, and it's a two-person support system there, where Finn leans on Gwen and Gwen leans on Finn. So it's like you really see why they feel so mature when we're watching this film.
Yeah, and I mean, this is again Madeline McGraw really giving it her all in this scene. I mean, this is hard to watch, and she sells every second of it. And it's weird because once you get later into the film, the father character, who I gotta say, he's a piece of shit, but I mean, Jeremy Davis, who plays him, does an excellent job here. He sells the
Absolutely.
hell out of that. And it's just one of those things where it's like he really uh embodies that role and everything. But towards the middle half to the end of the film, because I don't want to hit every single detail because we're gonna have to get moving here into
Oh
the
yeah.
actual abduction and everything. But this is important for setting the stage. He has remorse, which I thought was important and different again, because later on in this film, once Finney is taken, he softens up. He has this conversation now where he's yelling at Gwen because she's talking about how, he's saying the cops came around his work. And we kind of jumped over that scene a little bit, I guess, where the cops came to talk to Gwen
Yeah.
because she had mentioned something about black balloons to a friend of hers. And who I think, wasn't that one of the kids that got abducted? It was Bruce Yamada's sister.
Yes, that's his sister. Yeah.
Yeah, so she mentions black balloons to him. They've never released anything about black balloons to the press or anybody. So it's a detail about the case that they've been keeping under wraps. And so they think that she knows something or saw something, and they keep coming to talk to her. Well, they came to talk to her father, and that's why he's beating Gwen, because he's like, why are the cops snooping around here? Blah, blah. And she's like, I see things in my dreams. And this is when he hints towards their mother having, whether this is this kind of premonition stuff or she was just crazy or whatever, but she apparently would see things in her dreams and hear voices.
She's got the shine.
And that's kind of like what they're alluding to here. This wasn't in the book, I don't think, because Gwen's not in the story at all, right? Is she? I didn't finish it, so.
Okay, Gwen's not real. There's a character named Susanna, or Suzanne. I can't remember offhand which one it was, but that's the sister. She's actually an older sister by like 3 years, I believe. She's only in one scene where Finn has a dream that she is riding her bike through the neighborhood looking for the house that Finn would be in. And then she comes to the end of the street and finds a set of black balloons that have been tangled into the power lines, kind of signifying what the home would be. And then he wakes up just thinking it was a dream. And then this is, I don't know how far you've gotten, but Bruce is the only ghost that appears in the actual short story. So Bruce calls him and then tells Finn that that story is true. When you get home, ask your sister about the black balloon. So that's really the only the only scene that we ever see Suzanne or Susanna, I'm not sure, that sister in. That's it. So it's not very established at all. It's just a kind of a very minuscule thing. So they really did a good job of kind of establishing Gwen and really giving her a lot of scenery.
Absolutely, yeah, and they do a great job of like you said, establishing her as a character and really opening up this story. And so they have this whole argument or yelling, screaming match. You really see that Finn has he's holding everything back at this point. He wants to lay into his father, but he knows that it's pointless. He would overpower him, and everything. He's just kind of doing what he can. And then they go and watch TV. And then this is kind of when, I believe, is this when we switch over to Robin's point of view and he gets picked up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So shortly after that, Robin is abducted by the grabber. And I love that scene too, where they show the emergency on the television.
Yes.
And then you just hear all of the phones going off in the town. And it's just one by one until we get to Finney's house. And then his dad comes around the corner and asks him about him. And you just see on his face, he just knows.
Yeah.
And it's so sad. And then this is quickly followed up by the bullies, chasing Finney home. And we have this really brutal fight in the yard where these kids are kicking the fuck out of each other. Like, there is no denying that. Like, that's the thing about this movie. The violence amongst these kids is hardcore, man. Like, they do not shine away from it. Because, like, Gwen hits this kid with a rock and like he's got blood streaming down from his skull.
Oh yeah.
And she just sits next to him after she gets the shit kicked out of her because they don't hold back. These kids beat the fuck out of Gwen too.
Yeah.
It's brutal, and that's just a real interesting scene to me.
Yeah, and I know Scott Derrickson did say a lot of the violence in this is stuff that he encountered as a kid, and I think he said, I think he was talking about that Robin Moose fight, that was something that he had really kind of witnessed, and then the actual character saying, someone had actually delivered those lines about, putting on a show. So like a lot of this ultra violence, he said he experienced regularly. And the kids were just out there beating the hell out of each other on a regular basis. So I can't even imagine what he encountered regularly in terms of seeing everyday fighting and stuff like that. Because from what he had said, it sounded very brutal. So, because I know you had mentioned this when we had first seen it about the violence, and it seemed maybe a little over exaggerated. Which at first glance you'd be like, oh man, like they really turn the volume up to 10, but like apparently this is stuff that Scott Derrickson actually encountered as a kid.
Yeah, those kids in Colorado, man, they don't fuck around, I guess.
Vicious.
Especially not in the 70s. Maybe they're a little more mellow now that weed's legal and whatnot, but
there we go. Now they're all just chilling and hugging each
oh
other.
Yeah. But yeah, so we kind of start moving through our story here, and then we get to the point where it's Friday again. Gwen's gonna go to her friend's house, and Finney's walking home alone. And he comes across a guy coming out of his black van, spilling his groceries and dropping his hat.
Performance by Ethan Hawke on this one, because
yes,
it is such a hokey. You would not believe this guy, walking down the street. It's like this dude's spilling eggs and stuff. I'm gonna cross the street and walk down the other side because there's something off about this dude. But that's as an adult. So when a kid sees a magician, it's kind of a different,
especially at that time too, because I mean, you got to think like it wasn't that we're coming right up on the age of when they're starting to plaster kids on milk cartons.
Yep.
So it's one of those things where it's like this isn't something that's completely normal yet. Like it's not
this
fully
is something
publicized.
they're just figuring out. So that kind of serial killer, abduction, things like that, it's just becoming way bigger and more established at that point. So it's like, everyone's guard is down and they're not really expecting things like this. So it's like, hey, when you see a magician, it's all earnest. It's oh, he must be a magician, so he might show me a magic trick or two, that no one's thinking any ulterior motives there, but obviously the grabber has one.
Yep. And this is when Finney goes up and starts helping him, gives him his hat and everything. And then he's like, oh, you want to see a magic trick? And he's like, oh, sure. And he's all excited. But then he notices in the van, he's like, are those black balloons? And all the dots start connecting. And then he's just like, yeah, they are. And then he opens the door. And before Finney can even react, he starts spraying him. And what's interesting from the short story, they never got into what he sprays him with in this. But they specifically dedicated as a wasp, can of wasp spray. Yeah. It's fucking horrifying because that's those chemicals are designed to kill. So it's just like, Jesus, that has got to hurt like a son of a bitch. And they don't ever tell you if that's what it is in this story, but I mean, if they did, it's like that's pretty hardcore. But it's a rough fight. So he sprays him in the face and he wraps the balloons around him to kind of cover him, and then tries to shove him in the van before he passes out. And Finney gets him with this little rocket ship that he's been carrying around. It's like a little flashlight thing. It's aluminum. And he ends up stabbing the grabber in the arm. And this really pisses him off. And before we know it, we're waking back up and Finney is now in the basement. Yeah. And this is where the remainder of our film takes place.
And absolutely unsettling where Finn is like half out of it and being carried into the basement as he's delivering the lines of I had to, snap your neck and all this other stuff. It's just absolutely terrifying because that he's at the mercy of the grabber and there's nothing he can do. I mean, he's not even fighting back at that point because he's been sprayed with maybe that wasp spray, whatever it is. So he's still trying to recover. I mean, totally out of it. So knowing that, he's basically defenseless at this point, so unsettling to watch, especially that first time in the theater when you're just absorbing it.
Yeah, and it's intense. And I mean, they did in the trailer, from what I remember correctly, you see that encounter right before that, but you never see what happens after until you see the film.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where the rest of the movie, so we can kind of get through it here. It all, for the most part, it's all taking place in this basement. Ethan Hawke gives this really horrifying performance through and through. You kind of get this idea that he's got maybe a little bit of a split personality thing going on. He's always shifting the faces on his mask. He's talking about how it's like, oh, I'm not going to hurt you and stuff like that. It's like, I'm going to let you, I'll let you go here, but everything's all fucked up. And he keeps saying that things are not supposed to go this way. And, it's all this basically this psychological game between the grabber and Finney throughout the rest of this story, where their conversations are pretty brief, all in all. Like, they don't sit there and talk for very long. But when he does come to visit, it's a lot of just like, Finney trying to outsmart him or trying to get information, and the grabber kind of just, whether you never know what he's going to say when he comes through the door. You never know how he's going to be reacting. And, I love that. I think that it's a very smart play. And I know for Ethan Hawke, this was, he ultimately at the start of this turned down this role.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to play a bad guy. But then, he started to think about it. And, through persistence from Scott Derrickson, I believe, because, they'd worked together before, he was thinking, I'm getting older, like I haven't played many bad guys, if a bad guy at all, in my career. So, I might as well give this a shot and see what it is. And he completely got absorbed in this role. And, he really just played it and hammed it up and had so much fun with it. And, it's just one of those things where it shines through. Like, I mean, he's not, like I said, not on screen a ton in this movie, surprisingly, but I mean, he really, when he is on screen, he's giving it his all. And it is a brilliant performance.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have so many things to say. I think we'll probably save the Ethan Hawke probably for a little bit later. I'm guessing.
We could do it in cast and crew.
But I, getting into the actual story where Finn is just stuck in this basement, and that kind of becomes, reading that short story, and it's 30 pages, and we start most of it with the abduction, so he's almost right out of the gate, right into the basement, and we only have Bruce as a reference point in terms of the ghosts. The other four do not exist in the short story, so those are made completely up for the film. And it's like, what a choice, all the other ghosts that have been made up really help drive this story. And just like, Griffin, I think, is one that really sticks with me, maybe just because of his introduction of him like floating and bleeding, but then also kind of almost his sinister playfulness a lot of the times, and then kind of where they talk about Finney says, "Oh, I didn't know you," and he said, "No one did until."
Until it was taken.
Yeah, and it's like, just how horrifying is that he was probably a meek kid that no one really paid attention to and was overlooked, and no one knew of him until he was finally taken, and then it became, oh, everyone knows who Griffin is, and that is based off of an actual true abduction, I believe.
Because that's the Paperboy, isn't it? Because the Paperboy is the one who's based off of an abduction. Because I have that.
That's right. That's here. Right. I'm mixing up both mine. Griffin is not. Yes, Paperboy is. So Griffin, going back into him, it's just a very scary situation there. And then when he is kind of giggling on the phone and things like that, probably the most unsettling for me, in terms of all these ghosts.
Yeah, it's definitely some striking imagery. I always love how it builds up to it, where it's dark and Finney just has his light and he's just going across the wall, seeing the crack in the wall, and then he stops, and it's like you just see it out of the corner, And then right when he pans over, there he is. He's just dangling there. And Scott Derrickson, he loves his ghost children. So, it's like he's gonna
Absolutely.
put that in there. They were a big
Which
part
these
of
ones look way
Sinister.
better than Sinister.
Oh yeah, no, definitely for sure. I mean, you can tell that they've had a little bit of time. He's worked on some things, and I think the budget was just a lot higher on this too.
Yeah.
And it's a really cool scene when they introduce that. I love the introduction of all of the kids and all the characters. I think Vance Hopper has
Oh,
an
yeah.
interesting introduction in the sense of they show like kind of his backstory, but they kind of bleed that into like before you know it, you're in Gwen's dream.
Yes.
And then this is towards the end of the film where you start to piece things together because that's when she finds the house that Penny's being kept in. So, we'll get there. But pretty much the things that I do want to touch on before we kind of get to the last few things in the synopsis section here would be I like how they portray these kids on the phone and how they don't remember their names. They say their names are the first thing you lose when
Yes.
you pass over. And, that's just such creepy imagery to me, how, Finney just has to try to piece everything together to say who's who and
Yep.
all that. And, it's just, I think that's a really smart storytelling device because it not only does it present exposition, but, it makes it interesting and intriguing to the audience. It doesn't feel like you're being force fed anything. It's just natural because he's just trying to figure out for himself who these kids are that he's talking to.
And I love that he's figuring out, he's kind of giving us the little details, and then we cut to that Super 8 footage of Gwen's dreams, and we're actually seeing these kids before they were taken and kind of leading up to those instances, and then the actual kind of aftermath of, when the paper boy was taken and his bike's just sitting there
And
with
his dog and
with his
everything.
dog, and some is so strong, and it's like going into the Pinball Vance one, I love that the channels start overlapping, where it's like it's been pretty linear for the most part of it. And then when Finney meets Pinball and he is sitting on the opposite end of the bed there, and then he's delivering lines that don't make any sense, and you can tell that he's kind of living in some moment, but you don't really think too much of it. And then as soon as we go into that dream and Gwen is in the backseat with Pinball, and you're hearing Finn over the radio there, and they're kind of conversing for a moment, and then we realize that this has been the Pinball living in the dream of him being picked up by the police, and then kind of leading them to this house. And I thought that was a really interesting, it's like, oh, okay, it's like a light bulb moment. Okay, I love when things like that tie together, and it's something you're not really thinking of because none of the other ghost children really tie in terms of that type of storytelling device of leading you somewhere. But I love that they used just Pinball Vance's story to kind of lead you in for her to see the address.
Yeah, and the other thing that I like about each of the children, and I won't get too deep into detail here, so we can kind of move into how this all climaxes, would be how each of them give Finney a little bit of information of like, this is how I tried to get out, or this is what I learned while I was there, so he can have the best chance of escaping. And I think that that's really smart storytelling devices. It's great to open that up a little bit because, like you said, they only have Bruce Yamada in the story, the short story. So it's nice to have these other kids come in and kind of give him a little bit of information here and there, and how ultimately everything that the kids give him is used to defeat the grabber in the end, which is awesome. Like I like when things kind of tie up like that. Now, there's two moments I want to touch on before we talk about the final sequence, and then I'll give you a second to say anything that you want to if I'm forgetting anything. Is the sequence of the heart-to-heart between Gwen and her father. When he starts kind of, you can tell that Finney being gone has ruined him, and how he is just now regretful in every sense of the way. Like, he regrets how harsh he was on his kids. He regrets all this stuff. And I think that's really smart and played up there. And, how he's giving her the chance, even though she's talking about her dreams again. And he's specifically said that he never wants to hear her talk about that. And that's why he was beating her earlier. He still gives her a chance to explain. And I think that that's wonderfully concluded with the fact that he ends up driving her around trying to find this imagery, because he's just like, well, anything to get my son back. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that does show growth, and that does show reality to some of these characters. And I know some people aren't like that. Some people would still flip out and never do anything. But I think I like to see that, because it shows there's still humanity there. It's not that he wants to be a monster to his children. He's just got a lot of hurt, and he doesn't know how to control himself, and he doesn't know the appropriate way to go about anything. And it's fucked up, but it's like, it is what it is.
Well, and that's where I think that's a key factor in why these characters feel so authentic. Where I know I mentioned it when we first talked about this, where you look at like Stephen King properties. I feel like this character, maybe in Stephen King's hands, could have fallen into kind of how Bev's father was from It, where it's like, this is not the case at all. We're really dealing with such an authentic kind of archetype here, to where it's shades of gray. You know what I mean? Where it's like, he is a flawed human being. He's definitely not a good person, but he's not an all bad person either. He's struggling with his own issues as well. I mean, we don't even know if he was an alcoholic prior to the death of the mother. So it's kind of like, did this drive him there? Is he trying to deal with those demons the only way that he knows how? And then we kind of get that motive of he doesn't want Gwen to have the life that her mother had. He doesn't want her to end up in any sort of suicide or anything like that, of what her dreams are going to be telling her. So he really is such a flawed human being that doesn't know how to navigate this space. I mean, how do you navigate your child coming to you saying that, she has premonitions, and sometimes they turn out to be real. So it's like, he is really trying to navigate some space that, I don't think anyone is really prepared for. But then he also shows that while he may not believe all of this, I think he does believe it, but he doesn't want to believe it. That he has to listen to her. I think maybe the experience of the mom maybe being right occasionally, maybe not all the time, but that has some merit of, well, I do have to listen to her, because now I don't have the luxury of ignoring it. My son is gone. There are no leads. She did know about the black balloons, so let's go out here and I think maybe he's hanging on to a little bit of hope as well.
Absolutely. But we can then, like, the only other part that I kind of wanted to bring up would be the introduction of Max, which is the grabber's brother. And that kind of concludes into the climax with the twist. When I first saw that introduction, and it was just one of those things where I didn't really know where they were going with this. It just felt kind of like a random, like, extra piece that got tacked on. But the way that they conclude all of that is wonderful. I love it. And I mean, of course, you got James Ransone had to be in here at some point. He's basically that Scott Derrickson's boy right there. Like, he's in, I think, most of his stuff. I don't think he's in the Doctor Strange movies, but I know he's in Sinister, and he's in Sinister 2, which Scott Derrickson wrote. And he pops up in this. I'm just running through his filmography real quick to see if there's anything else that they kind of work together on. Now, that seems to be the only thing as the Sinister movies. But, obviously, if he brings back Ethan Hawke and he brings back Ransone, then, it's one of those things where it's like he likes to use his heavy hitters from other films.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great addition. It's funny. It adds a little bit of levity to the situation. But just him being able to kind of figure it out and piece everything together while we're gearing up for the climax of this movie is interesting in and of itself. Because they have that one transitioning shot. And I remember sitting in the theater with you when he's sitting there just after the cops came to visit him, and they go below the house and they show Finney there. And I'm like, that's got to be a transition. There's no way.
Yeah.
But as it turns out, that is the way. So it's just a little different. There's a little cherry on top there. But
he said some audiences did struggle with that, knowing if it was either an unveiling or a transition. He said a lot of people just thought it was a transition, but it was meant to be that unveiling. So, I kind of chuckled because we had that discourse,
Mhm.
and that's what I thought it was a transition sitting in the theater for the first
That's
time.
what it feels like,
Yep.
because it's like that's just too easy. It's like,
He
why
said
would
that
you do that?
He said they added in when you look at it, they're really going down a few different layers through the floor. So he tried to add in extra layers to trying to emphasize to the audience that this is an unveiling, just not a transition because they're showing so many different layers of the floor. But yeah, it's one of those things where it can go either way. Where for me, even watching this now still plays like a transition. It's
It
hard
does.
to
I think it's the speed in which
yeah.
it's shot and the way it's filmed. It's like if you would have taken your time and you had the music build up a little bit, I think that could have played a little better. But again, I digress. It's not that big of a deal. It doesn't ruin anything for you. Because at the end of the day, all it really did was add to that twist factor where it's like, okay, so it was this, but we've just kind of been under the wrong impression of where he's been this whole time.
Yeah.
So, it's pretty interesting. But Luke, so I don't run us any further into the section here. You want to wrap us up here with the climax of the movie?
Yes, perfection here. This is where, and this is, you had touched on it earlier, where the ghosts have been kind of giving him pieces. And this is where I think it's very interesting because we go back to that dialogue between Robin and Finn, where he says, at some point you're going to have to stand up for yourself. And, they really masked these things, these tools that he's given as an escape, which, Finn has been doing. He's been escaping the bullies. He's been running throughout this whole film, but it's really been about standing and fighting, and that's what they've been prepping him for this whole time.
And I guess we
So
should say real quick too that at one point Finn did get out of the house. And
yes,
you talked about it in your synopsis where that's a pretty intense scene where he's up there waiting to play naughty boy. And he's in a real creepy thing. He's got his shirt unbuttoned and everything. He's got his belt there. He's ready to go, but he falls asleep, the grabber, and then Finn gets out, but is quickly caught by
yes,
Ethan Hawke and brought in.
and
Uh,
that's the catalyst to this
mhm.
situation here because as Griffin says on the phone, he can't move on with the game unless you play naughty boy. So as soon as you hear him say night night naughty boy, that is okay. Now he can move on. Now he can kill Finn. And that's really where this kind of really picks up and starts moving because now
Mhm.
there are the stakes. They're ready. The grabber's ready to go and dispose of Finn. So the clock essentially starts. The sand starts running through the clock. So um, we get Finn getting ready for this final battle with the grabber, putting his plans together, really going Kevin McAllister a little bit with it. As we cut with the grabber going and picking up some supplies that he's going to need to dispose of Finn. Obviously, we know he's done this before. He knows what he's getting. And then we also cut with Gwen calling the police after she's found the house
Mhm.
that was in her dream, and we
With
had the
Vance
ghost.
Hopper.
Yeah, that we had the ghost children standing outside of, in a very Stephen King-esque feel to it. So we have all these kind of stories coming to a head at once here. We have Max, James Ransone's character, finally coming down and cracking the case in a sense as he sees Finn in the basement and still can't believe that he cracked the code himself as he's delivering this. I can't believe, let me tell you how I found you. We have the grabber coming up behind him and nailing him with, I think, a hatchet or
It was an axe. It was like
an
a fire
axe.
axe.
And laying waste to his own brother, which then the grabber blames Finn for, um, making him call down Samson because he's going to very brutally murder Finn. And this kind of ensues their fight after Robin had taught Finn how to, step forward, step back, and then kind of swing.
I want to
Um,
say too, this is the only time in the movie that we see Ethan Hawke's character with this mask. Where every time we've seen him, the mask has been covering his mouth. This is the only time that we see the mask only covering the top half of his face.
Yeah. And again, we'll probably go back into that mask, I think, in production stuff maybe, but because I think it's a wonderful design. But for we kind of learn, we get into this battle, and Finn leads him into the hole that he dug, and that leads to the grabber breaking his ankle and being stuck in this little hole as they kind of fight it out, where Finn just pretty much dismantles the grabber with his phone, and then ends up taking off his mask, which he totally freaks out about, and then strangles him until he puts the phone to his ear and says, you know, you have a call for you. And then that's I one of the most cathartic experiences in a theater, especially that first viewing, of hearing all the kids saying something to him over the phone right before Finn snaps his neck. You know, such a great kind of ending to this. Very strong. It's very emotional.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a very strong, impactful ending, especially when Gwen and Finney get back together, and you kind of see it all come to a head. It is a very satisfying ending,
Absolutely.
and then all kind of bookended with Finn going back to school and everybody kind of whispering, oh, that's the one who killed the grabber, like, oh, I thought he'd be taller and blah 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 stuff. And he gets his confidence there. It's the thing that everybody's been pushing him to get the whole movie, Robin and then so forth. And he goes and he sits next to Donna, was it?
Yes.
And just says what's up to her, and then that's the end of the film. So it's a very sweet, very kind, good ending to the story.
Yeah. Very, very much of a happy ending after such a morbid time with this film. I think the pacing is so well done. The battle feels, the tension was there. They took a good time of the film building up to that. I just thought it was so well done. I think that's why I love this film so much. Is all the characters feel so complete here, that it's so meaningful during that final battle, and then that kind of resolution you get between Finn and Gwen and the dad, and then when Finn goes back to school, to kind of be like, oh, well, there's hope there.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you, brother. But yeah, that's kind of going to wrap us up here for this section. And we can move into our next section, which we so lovingly call Behind the Mask.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be in front of your TV sets for the Horathon. And remember the big giveaway at 9. Don't miss it. And don't forget to wear your masks. The clock is ticking. It's almost time.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
Alrighty, so this is where we kind of dive into some of the production history with this film. I don't think there's going to be a ton of stuff, just because it's, there haven't been all those stories that have come out yet for this film. It's only a few months old, but I have some cool trivia pieces. And Luke, you did listen to the commentary, so is there anything that you can kind of pull from that? Any kind of cool pieces from the production side that you can give us?
Production wise, Scott Derrickson really did dive into a lot of the kind of where his headspace was when he was filming this. And I think maybe some of the shots there kind of go overlooked a little bit, just because you're not really you're paying attention so heavily into the dialogue that you're not really experiencing, a ton of the filmmaking during maybe the first couple viewings of this. But he does talk about, especially when Finn's first down there in the basement, where he between that shot between him and the grabber, where they're both standing up and on opposite sides, and the grabber still he's in the doorway, where he didn't really move the camera too much. He really just set it in place because he wanted the acting to speak for itself and kind of give those actors the space. So he really just wanted to set it up in that kind of middle shot and then just let the actor go, which when looking at that, you don't pay attention to it that much. But I think that really says a lot about the extent of how he believes in the actors, especially Finney's character, because it's like there's so much emotion there. that it's an interesting choice to not cut, not to do any extreme close-ups, nothing like that, to really just let them move.
Yeah, and I think that's some really smart stuff from Derrickson there as far as decision making goes and
Yeah.
everything when it comes to piecing something together.
And one of the
Uh,
other things I wanted to talk about, sorry to cut you off,
oh,
but
you're good.
uh, that ending, one of the ending shots between Robin um, and Finn, it's a one shot, and it goes on for such a long time. And he talks about it, whereas that so that ending with Robin, and he's on the phone with him, kind of giving him that confidence. It was just supposed to be. It was written just as an off-screen kind of voice through the phone. As they were getting into it, they decided that they wanted Robin back to kind of, uh, kind of show him visibly. They felt like the audience would want to see him one last time because the last time we do see him is right before he gets abducted. The problem was the actor had just flown home hours prior.
Oh
So
man.
what had happened was they decided this while he was already flying home. He got to the airport, got the message that they needed him back, so he immediately had to get back on a plane and fly back out to set. And because of this, they had no prep time. So uh, Derrickson got there early that day and just started feeling it out. So they were really just running and gunning. That scene where you see Finney on the phone, Robin behind him, and then walking toward the wall, and then the fight, showing him how to fight. That was all just feeling from Scott Derrickson. He goes, we were just moving the camera, deciding what works, and it was all decided on the go. So it's like, and to do a one shot like that all the way up until when Finney breaks the phone cord. I mean, I know they talk about the Halloween 1978, but like looking at this is it probably goes overlooked until Scott Derrickson pointed out that this is a one shot. I didn't even pay that much attention to it, and it goes on
I'm
for such a long time.
gonna have to go back and watch that because I didn't even register that was a one shot.
Yep.
One of the notes that I have here was that Derrickson says that the axe in the head was a very difficult special effect to do. He adds that he looked through the whole history of cinema and there just aren't any real shots of an axe going into a head on camera. They pulled it off with a combination of both practical and visual effects, of course. But I thought that was interesting. I don't know if is that true? That they didn't they that there's no other like real shots of an axe striking somebody in the head like that?
I
Because
did.
if so, it is pretty visceral and
Yeah.
shocking when it happens. I mean, like it's one of those scenes you just do not expect.
Yeah, and there may be a couple of axes going into heads. I feel like maybe films shy away from that just because maybe it can't be done correctly. And if if there are, I really feel like it's probably the most generic way to do it, or typical way to do it, is axe coming right to the top of the head. That's what I feel like I've seen, if I've seen anything like that. This one really comes from the back, so it's like you really have to kind of get that down in terms of expressions and things like that to really play it. It was a really unique kind of movement, I think, coming from behind like that and hitting someone in the head with an axe. So again, very jarring scene. You knew something was going to happen, but I wasn't really expecting that kind of uh, just murderous shot. I mean, the blood splatter, everything. When we're talking gore, that is a very gory scene.
No, and like I said, it's shocking. It's visceral in all the best ways. Like it really does come out of nowhere. It seems like, um, but I mean, it's to be expected at the same time because
Yeah.
obviously that would have been too easy of an ending. I feel like to just have Max release him.
Yes.
Finney had to finish his arc, as they say. But yeah, unless you have anything else, that's really the only other behind the scenes stuff that I could pull out of this. Like I said, it's a very fresh film, so there isn't a whole lot out there right now about more behind the scenes production. I'm sure as Scott Derrickson and everybody get interviewed over the next few years, we'll get more and more as we go along. maybe in 20, 30 years we'll even have a book about it. So
Yeah. Now,
you know.
yeah, I mean that's we're pretty much current with this one. That's why we kind of stay away from these kind of most current films here. There isn't that much to talk about yet. There is, I mean, we have one commentary track, so there isn't really that much to go on here. But yeah, so I mean, we're pretty limited, I would say.
But I mean, still, all in all, really some interesting stuff behind the scenes there. I'd be curious to hear more
Oh yeah.
about what happened with this. But yeah, so that's going to wrap us up for a very short section of Behind the Mask. So now we can kind of dive into the cast itself with You Are All My Children.
You are all my children now.
Yeah, so this is our cast and crew segment where we just like to break down who are some of our favorite players in the film, who really gave the best performances. And I mean, we can start right off the top with Ethan Hawke. I know we were kind of saving that for this section. So Luke, I'm gonna let you, because I said a little bit of my piece earlier, I'm gonna let you take this off with Ethan Hawke. How you feeling about his performance in this film?
Oh my gosh, this I think he really brings this film together here where we had talked about reading the short story and seeing the film here where the description of the grabber in the short story is very different than what we get here on screen with Ethan Hawke. The original grabber from the short story is described as kind of this obese man named Al, and that's what we do not get that here. This is, I mean, Ethan Hawke's a very good looking gentleman, very, I don't know, like we know Ethan Hawke is like this kind of good looking, suave kind of guy. I think so. For him to portray this kind of character, I think is very unique because it is so performance based because he is wearing this mask the whole time. And kind of going into, I know you had said he initially turned down this role where Scott Derrickson had given him the script. He actually talked about it in the commentary and said, I have this character I want you to play. And he said, I don't do horror movies. And he said, well, I will just read the script. And he said, well, it's going to have to be a really good script for me to decide to do this. He said, well, just give it a read and let me know what you think. And Scott Derrickson said that he had gotten a voicemail from Ethan Hawke and reading a line from the screenplay in that grabber's voice. And he goes, basically, after I listened to that voicemail, I knew that he was in, which I thought was hilariously fun because, he's so hesitant to do something like this. And then, I mean, Ethan Hawke is on another level of acting and you really see it here. And then just for him to already be into it before they turn on those cameras really shows here. And, Scott Derrickson talks about there are so many different takes of so many different ways that Ethan Hawke had portrayed the grabber that he goes, the portrayal that we see in this film is pretty much the most consistent through line that Ethan Hawke gave him because he was bringing so many different things for Scott Derrickson to choose from. And I mean, that's just the kind of actor he is.
Yeah, I mean, like you get Ethan Hawke attached to your material, you've already jumped up a few notches in I think most people's books. And I think that the hesitation to do horror movies, especially after the success of Sinister still being there, is just crazy to me. But I mean, I guess it's just not really his bag. But dude, like he's 2 for 2 now in my book. Like, I mean, he just should really keep staying in this world, messing with this stuff because it's like he is fantastic. I mean, he's a great actor in and of itself, but the way that he embodied this character and the way that he embodied his character in Sinister, which are 2 very opposite sides of the spectrum here. And where Ellison is one of those characters, it's like you're very sympathetic, even though his ego kind of pushes him to levels where he probably shouldn't go. And with this one, it's like it's the exact opposite. You show no sympathy for this character because he is very much just this amalgamation of true to life monsters. And I wanted to bring that up as how between Derrickson and Ethan Hawke, they intentionally pulled a lot of elements from all these famous serial killers. Grabber is based on real life serial killers: Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer. Ted Bundy would use a ruse to lure his victims to help him to his car. John Wayne Gacy would use a belt on his victims. And Jeffrey Dahmer had one of his victims escape from his apartment only to be recaptured. So it's just one of those things where it's like they kind of really did play into those elements of the Grabber and really kind of go off of real life and try to bring some kind of groundedness to him. And you get that in his performance. He doesn't feel like this overly eccentric character, even though he wears this this mask, which we'll get into in our next segment. But I mean, it is one of those things where it's like he still has that kind of, you can tell something's wrong with him. And I know some people have said their major complaint was that they wanted to learn more about the Grabber and get more into his backstory. I don't think it's necessary. I think that the performance that Hawke gives and the way they choose to portray the story is just enough, because it leaves that shroud of mystery to me of like, why is he this way? And, you know, what makes him tick? And it just leaves your mind running.
Yes, and that's where it's like less is more there in terms of we don't need to know A, B, and C of his character. He gives so much in that performance of when we do see him, and he flips those switches so many different times that across the board he's giving us so many ranges of emotion. One of the ones that really it sticks out to me, and I think I credit Ethan Hawke for portraying it the way that he did, is because it appears in the short story, but it's not really an emotional moment. It's almost more offhand. But I think Ethan Hawke plays it so emotional. It's when Finney's waking up from the bed and they're talking for a minute, and he asks him, well, you know, if you can't do any of this, why do you even come down here? And Ethan Hawke, he's only got the bottom part of the mask on, and so we can see his eyes, and he goes, to look at you, just to look at you. And it's like he has tears in his eyes. And I mean, like, Ethan Hawke brought that character there where you know, that could have been delivered just emotionless, and you close the door and you go away. But like, you can tell that this character, the Grabber, is getting emotional. And you can't really tell exactly if this is kind of something calling back to his own childhood. Is he crying because of what he knows he feels he has to do to Finn? There are so many questions in terms of the range of emotion that Ethan Hawke brings to this character, that you want to know what's going on in the Grabber's head at that point. But it's great that we don't dive into that backstory, so we can never really be sure.
Absolutely. And then, you know, we touched on them a little bit before, but, you know, the other cast members that we have, I mean, really, with such a young cast, again, it can't be understated just how wonderful the performances from Mason Thames and Madeline McGraw were. I think that they carry so much of this movie on their shoulders, and, you know, they carry it all the way from the start to the end. And it really is just a great amalgamation of having great actors on set and great direction with a wonderful script. But I mean, seriously, they both offer these very human, very realistic, very funny, very heartwarming performances.
Yeah, and you know, and I mentioned it earlier, this dynamic duo in a sense where Finn is kind of the more you know, I don't want to say meek because I said he wasn't, but he's more of the straight man, where it's like he's not going to ham it up as much as Gwen's character does, you know. So I think they complement each other so well that it really makes this film. And again, always questionable in terms of casting young actors that don't really have a history, that you don't really know what you're going to get other than what the initial audition was. So to really have that much faith in Madeline McGraw's character, for her to portray that, I mean, is really testament to Scott Derrickson and that vision that he had, because you know, Ethan Hawke really brings a lot to this film, but without great casting for Finn and Gwen, I think this film could have been dead in the water.
I agree. And I mean, it's so important that you get that right. And the fact that they knocked out so well is just excellent. Um, Miguel Cazares Mora as Robin, also an excellent child performance. I mean, he brings again so much levity, so much realness to this performance. This is his only acting credit. So I mean, I think that he will definitely be getting more roles as time goes on, because he was excellent. Again, he brought in a way this believability to his character of just the kind of history that he has and kind of how he was raised and this toughness. But he also brought a lot of humanity, brought a lot of understanding to Finney and not giving him such a hard time. And he's just one of those actors that, I'm curious to see where his career goes from here. I mean, you give him another couple of great roles like this, especially as he gets older. I mean, he could be in the big leagues as he continues on. And I think that's with any of these kids. Like they all really were well cast. Like the casting director and everybody, they really need to pat themselves on the back because they found some excellent child actors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this was a lot of first roles for a lot of these kids, I believe. So, Robin, like you said, I think he has a great career ahead of him. The only thing that I'm going to be disappointed in is if he's not cast in every role that he plays is going to be kicking someone's ass. I'm going to feel just slightly disappointed. And, but all these characters, they made you feel something. Even because they're only on screen for so often because the bulk of it is Gwen, Finn, and the Grabber. So, but with what they're given in the stories that they tell, I mean, this tears at your heartstrings, throughout this entire film. So, really, really great stuff from all the kids that they casted.
Absolutely. And then two others that I wanted to highlight here. We did speak about, I guess, three. I'll throw them all in here together just because they're kind of the last couple. We did talk about James Ransone already. Excellent as well. Great stunt casting there, basically, of just bringing him back in. Like I said, he's also a Scott Derrickson regular.
Yeah.
But again, Jeremy Davis, Roger Mitchell, and Troy Rubenseal. Jeremy Davis obviously is the father, but then we have the two detectives in E. Robert Mitchell and Troy Rubenseal, I guess how you say that. Both of those guys did very serviceable jobs. I like the portrayal of the detectives in this.
Yeah.
They were never like super imposing to the children. They actually seemed like they were trying to solve this case. So they were trying to appease them even when they're being called fart knockers and, getting cussed out and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like you felt the essence of just like, we're at our wits' end here. We will take any lead that we can get because we need to find these people before more kids get taken.
Yeah, and I feel like they were the two that were like, let's try anything, where they could go back to the station and be laughed at for talking to Gwen, but it's like, hey, we got to do something to solve this. So they're the ones taking the initiative to come out and try and find anything that they can. And I do love the camaraderie they have with Gwen. I wish we would have seen a little bit more of it just because I think it is so much fun, but I know you can't really dedicate that much time to it. But I thought the scenes that we did have, especially that initial scene between the two, I thought was a lot of fun.
I agree. But all right, I think that wraps up for our cast and crew segment here. Do you have any other bullet points you want to hit here, or you think we can move on?
No, I think we can move on, sir.
All righty, so then we're going into our next segment, which we dubbed Creatures Features.
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Alrighty, so this is a little bit of an interesting one, not as effects heavy as some of our other films that we've selected have. There isn't much that we can go off of as far as, we talked about the stuff with the axe, that being kind of an interesting practical effect. So really, what I want to talk about in this segment is more just that design choice for the mask,
Yes.
and just what an original and very unique design that they give to that. And I love that it's like this porcelain mask that can be detached in so many different ways. It almost feels, and I know we kind of talk Hellraiser a little bit before here, but it almost feels puzzle boxy in a
Yeah.
sense of like you just don't know what kind of configuration he can pull off next. Because, like you said, sometimes he doesn't have the top of the mask, sometimes he doesn't have the bottom, other times he has different little faces he can put on there. And it's just like I wonder where he got this made and where it's developed from. One of the things I noticed this last time is that it has these leather straps to it.
Yeah.
So it's clearly something that's a little bit more custom, which I wonder if he made it himself or if this was something that he had somebody else make for him.
Yeah. For me, I found it intriguing as well. Just because again, we go back to short story. The mask for the grabber does not appear in the short story, so this is something unique to the film as well, and it adds so much. I mean, it's in the marketing. That's what we know Ethan Hawke wearing all the time. We barely see Ethan Hawke's face in this because he's always wearing this mask. So it's like I think to make this the centerpiece of the film, especially in terms of casting someone like Ethan Hawke and then say, hey, we're going to cover your face for 95% of this, you really got to find something that's going to work. And this was another thing where I think Joe Hill came to them and said, the original grabber in the short story is a clown, and he said we can't do a clown because it just came out. We're not going to do that.
They're going to draw too many parallels, and for those who don't know who Joe Hill is, it's like for those who do, it's kind of going to be like, oh well, it's like your dad kind of thing, which is unfortunate, but I mean, it's like you understand those parallels are going to be drawn.
Yeah. And so he wanted to kind of divorce that whole clown imagery here and had brought to Scott Derrickson and Robert Cargill that maybe we should, let's change it to a magician. And I believe it was Joe Hill who also brought them, or it could have been Scott Derrickson. I keep getting this one mixed up in terms of the devil and the magician, where there was this act, I think from the 1930s, maybe,
Mm-hmm. I
where
vaguely remember hearing about this.
where a magician would do half his act as a magician and then half his act as the devil. So that's when they kind of came up with the concept of well, he's wearing a mask, we want it to be the devil. And I think this works so well, especially with the changing of the expressions. It's so unique, so unsettling, especially when especially watching the film the first time and then watching it the second time when you know what the expressions are coming as, like when he is sitting in the doorway asking Finn what his actual name is, and we know Finn lies to him, and he steps into the light and it's already the sad face. So it's like he was already prepped for Finn to lie to him, and it's just another form of storytelling, I think, in terms of he knows what Finn's answers are going to be because he's been through this 5 other times. So I think it's very intriguing in that sense. The mask itself, absolutely unsettling, especially the sad expression to me when he's sitting in the kitchen waiting to play naughty boy with the sad face on and in the belt in his hand and his shirt off. Ugh, absolutely unsettling. The mask is so well done. I love the pieces here. Something so different in a time where we struggle to find horror icons and to kind of have something that has its own feel. I think the Black Phone was able to kind of create this kind of unique mask and feel to this character.
Yeah, and the mask was developed by a man named Jason Baker. He's also done work for WrestleMania, so like WWE and all that. He is also apparently he was in one of his things that he was known for was he was also in that Smoke and Mirrors documentary. And he's also worked with Slipknot a few times for some of their music videos. So he has put together some of their stuff, but his biggest credit to date is this film in specific. So the Black Phone has kind of been his big thing.
Yeah.
And I completely get it, man. I mean, like this is some excellent work, and it's wonderful to see it kind of come together and work so well.
Yeah. Jason Baker, I think, had a pretty big hand in creating WWE's The Fiend Bray Wyatt's mask. Very, very intriguing character. Maybe someday we'll get a deep dive into learning a little bit more about him. But
Hint.
but we'll this is where it's like, really hit or miss in terms of like, my problems with Wrong Turn 2 in terms of the effects and things like this, where this mask could have come off extremely hokey, or they could have really knocked it out of the park. So it's like, you have to get someone in here who really knows what they're doing. And I mean, like, for this one, I think like seeing the promotional stuff, I wasn't sure how the mask was going to play when I had first seen the trailer. And then as soon as we're in it and we first see the mask with the very first expressionless face, no mouth, I was like, I'm sold for this. It's like seeing it and experiencing it. It fits so well. It adds so much to the character. It fits even the Grabber's character. That kind of he's kind of creepy, kind of a weirdo. This all works on so many different levels.
I agree. And then this kind of, to wrap this segment up, I wanted to say, and I wanted to mention this part of the movie. So when Finn's getting the upper hand on the Grabber and he's about to take him out, he does kick his mask off, I believe, or
Yes.
he rips it off in some fashion. You see the Grabber grab his face and start screaming. What do you think the implication is there? Because I know that stuck out to a lot of people when I went back and saw people's kind of deep dives on this film doing research.
Yeah.
A lot of people pointed to that sequence as just being so subtle. And again, we don't really get much into why.
Yeah.
But what psychologically do you think you get from the mask here, from the Grabber? Like, what is this?
I thought this was very interesting because this was also Ethan Hawke's own direction here. Scott Derrickson said he did not tell him to react in that fashion at all when that mask came off. That's just what Ethan Hawke wanted to do. Clearly, there's some sort of image problems there. I think he's living in his own role because you even see it when he abducts Finn. He's got paint on his face.
Yes,
So,
I was gonna say, and sunglasses. So it's like,
Yeah.
is he really wants to hide his face?
yeah. So I think for the Grabber, and again, here we don't know his name. In the short story, his name's Al, and here we just call him the Grabber, strictly the Grabber. And watching him with Finn, he's never true to himself. Where when he goes this face, and we see it right behind us here, always performing. He's very much the magician. I think throughout this entire film, any interaction with Finn is never true. I think maybe the one where he is tearing up and just saying, "Just look at you," is probably the closest that we get. But even that, I don't believe it. So he's definitely dealing with different image problems here, where I feel like he doesn't want, as long as it's not his bare face, it's not him doing these actions. You know what I mean? I think it's more of a projection in a sense, where we even see it where he says, "You killed those boys." He said, "That wasn't me. Someone else did that." So I really feel like as long as he has the mask on, he can say that he is not guilty of these crimes. It's always someone else.
Mm-hmm. It's just a good way for him to hide. But yeah, alrighty. So that's going to move us into our final segment of the night here, folks, which we like to call "The Check is in the Mail."
You just listen to the old Pork Chop Express and take his advice on a dark and stormy night, all right? When some wild-eyed 8-foot-tall maniac grabs your neck, taps the back of your favorite head up against a barroom wall, and he looks you crooked in the eye and he asks you if you've paid your dues, well, you just stare that big sucker right back in the eye, and you remember what old Jack Burton always says at a time like that. Have you paid your dues, Jack? Yes, sir, the check is in the mail.
And so this kind of gets us into our last segment, folks, here, where we kind of like to wrap things up, give our final thoughts, recommendations on the film here. I think it goes without saying that we both highly recommend this film. If you saw a review back in June, then that is already true. We've already kind of stated that this is going to be up there on our list of, best films of the year. And I mean, we've just spent, nearly 2 hours gushing about it. So, it's easily one of the best of 2022. And I can say that if you have not checked it out yet, why are you listening to this podcast? Why did you just let us spoil all this for you? But even then, I still think it's worth a watch because, you're going to get so much more just from watching it than us talking about it. And, if you have seen it and, it's one of those things where you're just looking for more content on it, let's talk about it. Drop a comment down below. Let us know what you think of it, because this is seriously, I think, a very special movie in Scott Derrickson's career. And I'm excited to see what he does next, because if it's anything of this caliber, then we could have another, really fantastic film to kind of go along with this and Sinister under his resume. And I do think that this one is going to be a standout in his career going forward. I think that this is going to be, if not his highest mark, one of them as he goes along.
Yeah. And this is kind of, I deem it as a reinvigoration of Scott Derrickson's career, but I don't want it to sound like he's had a bad career up until this point. I just feel like, he did the Doctor Strange stuff, and now he's kind of redirected as to what he wants to do more so. And this is kind of a slightly bigger budget than what we usually get with a lot of these kind of Blumhouse horror films. And it shows you can get a giant return for this stuff. So I think this one's going to have a really big legacy in terms of getting those a little bit bigger budget to show that, hey, we can do this, and there's going to be a market for it, because this film, after it came out, was being advertised everywhere because of everyone talking about it. I think to a general audience, this one was a real unexpected hit. It just kind of going in to see what this was about. But, I think that the story works, the characters work. Everything in this is just, for me, it's a 10 out of 10. Like this is my favorite film of the year so far. And it's just perfection. It makes you feel for all these characters. It makes you hate other characters. Really, really unique stuff here.
Absolutely. And again, going back to those performances, there's so many strong young actors here who are just getting their start, who've been in very minimal things up to this point. I really hope that this kind of launches them and that they can kind of work some more. I'd love to see Madeline McGraw work with Scott Derrickson again. And again, I'd love to see Ethan Hawke and Scott Derrickson keep teaming up, because obviously they got a good working relationship, and he's gotten 2 great performances out of him. I'd love to see what more he can get, because obviously they really got a magic touch together. And it's, if Ethan Hawke is still after this putting off horror films, I don't know why, because he does such a damn good job.
Yeah, and this film could have been the one that kind of got Ethan Hawke to tap into that darker side of things, whereas maybe he will be a little bit open to playing a villain in the future, or at least a darker character, and not kind of the hero of the story. So I'm intrigued to see if he's a little bit more open in the next few years to do another Scott Derrickson project where, maybe he gets a little dark. Because this really does open up that avenue, because everyone's spoken so highly of his performance here, that it would be a travesty if we don't see something similar like this from him again.
100%. But alrighty, I think that's going to wrap us up here for the Black Phone. Luke, you got any closing thoughts on this bad boy?
Overall, just a great film. Lots of nooks and crannies in here. I mean, I've watched it several times. But watching it with the commentary this last time really kind of opens up a lot of doors, makes you realize a lot of different things in terms of the filmmaking aspect of it and what really goes into this. It's one of those things where it's available on Peacock, but you really want to have that commentary. And it's like, well, man, I really wish I could get a Black Phone Blu-ray. So we may have an idea of where you can get one of those, I think.
I think so. And that's what brings me to my next little piece here of, so if you haven't known, or this is, you only watch our podcast, you don't watch our other content, first off, what are you doing? Watch the other content. We put a lot of hard work. Come on, hit that subscribe button, follow us up. But we have a live stream going on Halloween. we've been talking about it. We have a little giveaway we're doing. We only have a couple entries, but hey, we're giving away a copy of this movie on Blu-ray for your consuming pleasure, whatever you want to say. Luke's got it right there. And we also are giving away an exclusive Splatterthon mug that you can enter just by clicking the video link in the description and commenting what your favorite horror movie is. That's all you got to do to enter. We'll be doing a live drawing on Halloween. We're going to be starting that at about 8 p.m., where we're going to have everybody come on and we're going to do a watch long / commentary of The Black Phone. So, Luke, you will have to watch it one more time before you put it on the shelf for a while. But yeah, we're going to have a good time. We're going to sit there and talk about it and just go through each piece bit by bit, just like we did here on the podcast, only live and with you guys. We're going to have a lot of fun. So if you're not doing anything for Halloween, you just want to watch a good horror movie, come on down and watch The Black Phone with us. And then, like I said, you'll have up until the drawing to enter by clicking the link into that video. And then you might just walk away with that copy of, the movie and the mug. So it will be really cool. It will be a lot of fun. And, we're going to try to make the best of it and kind of really send off the first edition of the Splatterthon with a bang. So
here we go.
This
Lots
will be
of blood
quite
and
a lot.
guts.
Oh yes. But yeah, other than that, guys, that's going to wrap it up here for us. So as usual, you can follow us on all our social media at SplatterCast Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for all the latest and greatest. If you haven't done it yet, please hit that subscribe button. We are trying to hit 500 subscribers by the end of next week. So you have a week left. We are at, as the time of this recording, we are at, I believe, 417. So we're doing pretty well. And honestly, we started off this trying to say, let's get to 100 by the end of October. You guys crushed that before October even started. So the fact that we're up this high is insane. We love you all to death. And we hope that you guys keep coming back for this content. And if we can hit 500 by the end, this will have been a resounding success. I mean, it already is, but if we could, I mean, my God, that would be the greatest gift we could be given on Halloween for sure.
It would have been something we never would have guessed
No,
into
not at all.
October.
And I mean, it makes it so much better with all the stuff that we've put into this, because we've put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of late nights getting these reviews and these movies and things up for you guys. And we still have a lot more coming. Obviously, if you are just tuning in, it's Monday. So depending on when you're watching this, but we have another episode, the last episode for this run of Better Off Dead. So that's going to be pretty fun. We also have another review for Chucky coming up this week, as well as a couple of new film reviews at the end of the week, and another live stream coming to you on Friday, which is where we're going to be talking about Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, just where we're going to all sit back, enjoy watching that, bring our Halloween review / discussion to a close. I know that's one of Luke's all-time favorites in the series.
Yes,
I also quite enjoy it, so we're just going to kind of cap that off with this. And then next year, and I'll probably bring this up a couple more times, we're talking about going down the rabbit hole with the Thorn trilogy. So we will revisit part 4 again, but with a more dissection review discussion. And then, obviously we'll talk about 5, 6, and I think I want to do 2 episodes on 6, one on the regular cut and one on the producer's cut, because they're quite different.
Boy.
So yeah, we're gonna have to watch that one a couple times, but I'm sorry.
Rough
yeah, that's gonna bring it all up for us. Luke, you got anything for him?
Nah, just stay tuned. Another busy week for us. So we are drawing near toward the end of October in Splatterthon, but we still got a lot of great stuff, as Dylan had mentioned. So another busy week coming up right at you, all encapping with the Sunday Scaries again.
Oh, yes. We will have another episode of the Sunday Scaries as well. And yeah, I mean, as of recording this, we see you guys are really responding to this last episode. So we thank you very much for that. We're going to be doing some things here pretty soon. Once we're out of October, we'll be kind of doing a little announcement video. So keep an eye out for that. Talking about restructuring a couple of things, kind of seeing what you guys like and what you disliked. And, we're going to kind of streamline some stuff. And Sunday Scaries is probably going to be getting a facelift. So keep an eye out for that. It's a fun time. And all righty, guys. Well, that officially wraps us up here. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.